This is ICMK. Today I want to talk about the lack of depth in Mortal Kombat 1 and how that is one of the core issues with the game, is how simplistic the characters really are in their design and why this is such a big deal when compared to their competitors such as Tekken or Street Fighter. So instead of just going on saying like there's a lack of depth, it's too simplistic, I want to give a couple more thorough examples for Mortal Kombat 1 as to kind of explain. We'll go through a couple characters and explain the depth of them. And I want to talk specifically about a couple characters that I'm well versed with, that I know very well. So first, let's talk about Reptile, as I'm a Reptile main. And let's look at what kind of options he has in different situations. So Reptile, when you're, jump distance away, that mid-range, and you're playing footsies, as a Reptile, you're going to be looking for your back three primarily. 16 frame, back three, low combo starter. Alternatively, in these footsies, another option, in this range, and playing footsies, using your forward three, I believe it's 15 frames, so just slightly faster. It's a high, but you can go forward 3-1 into full combo, or forward 3-1-1 to be safe on block with a little bit of pushback when you're not in the corner, and if they don't flawless block the last hit. The third option, in your mid-range footsie scenario, is Reptile's dash attack. You can do the normal unenhanced version, but typically enhanced dash attack so that you recover faster from it and safer on block if you're blocked. But that's more of like a YOLO option, right? That's more not something that you're going to do all the time, really. Not be looking for that all the time, but try to surprise your opponent with it here and there. Quick dash attack. That's pretty much it from that range for Reptile. That's pretty much it. You might be thinking, well, what about his force balls? Yeah, you can shoot one out to kind of, keep them guessing. Check your opponent with a force ball. But you don't want to do that too much, because Reptile's force ball at that range is actually easily avoidable and easily can take a full combo punish because of Reptile's slow-ass recovery on his force balls. So they're mid-range, jump distance, mid-range away. You're basically only able, you're looking for your down three. Primarily, to be real, you're primarily just looking for your, not your down three, but your back three. Your back three, 16 frame, low combo starter. Alternatively, you might try to get a counter hit with a quicker forward 3-1, right? But that's your options there. That's all you got. from full screen, Reptile doesn't have shit, because his projectiles, his force balls, don't go full screen. You actually have to enhance for it to go full screen, and then it literally only goes full screen. It goes like a full screen length. It doesn't keep traveling past that if there's more stage to keep going on. So in the full screen scenario, you shoot out a force ball, and the opponent can just be backdashing or walking backwards to get out of the range of the force ball, basically. Really, at full screen, Reptile's only real option is that he has to come forward. He has to advance. He has to close that distance, at least some, right? So he doesn't really have options for full screen. Nothing that's like, nothing great, nothing good. You know, force ball, if you want to stay at full screen, but if you're using like a full screen force ball, enhanced force ball, and you move forward, that allows them to go back to just get out of the range of the force ball. So let's go ahead and go up close. What does Reptile have? What can Reptile do? What's his options in that sweep distance up, to right up in your face, right? Well, again, he has his back 3, 16 frame, low starter. Yes, it's 16 frame, which is kind of slow for that distance, but surprisingly, it will catch more people. Like, you can hit the back 3 with Reptile at point blank, and even though 16 frames, you'll get it more times than you'd expect. In this range, you got the forward 3 too. Maybe if you want to try to catch, if you read that they're going to backstep on you or something, try to catch them backstepping with that. Typically, I just use back 3 though in that situation if I think they're going to be doing a backdash. But let's see. He has his forward 2, his forward 2-1, which goes right into full combo. His forward 2 is a 12 frame mid, so it's not the fastest, it's not the slowest either. It's just fast enough. It's literally just fast enough to work with Reptile and to be able to use it in this close range. You can get some counters off of it depending on the exact distance and what your opponent throws. But there are things, like I said, it is 12 frames, so it can be beat by faster moves. So it leaves your last 2 options. When that's being beat, you basically drop down to 2 options when you're getting beat by it in whatever situation. And that's to use your standing 1, which is 7 frames plus 1 on block. You can use that to try to maybe set up your mid to be slightly faster. Or do standing 1-1, which keeps you at neutral on block. Besides that, you have your down 1, like everybody does, 7 frames. 7 frame down 1 mid. Basically use it to try to keep your turn, right? Try to keep the pressure on. But that's it. That's literally all Reptile has to his game. Now, that of course is talking about Reptile, specifically just him. and not the consideration of cameo use. One thing that's nice with Reptile in MK1 is that he works decently well with more cameos than other characters typically do. Like how many characters or how many cameos he can use he has a wider pool of candidates to choose from, basically, depending on what you're going for. So there's, of course, cameos that will give you more full screen options, like Serena, for example, or Chameleon, being able to throw projectiles. There's Striker, of course, that you can do the same stuff that you do with every other character with Striker, right? Motaro, that I particularly like. I like Motaro the best because I feel like he opens up more things for Reptile than any other single cameo. For example, I like to do Force Ball at full screen. I'll do Enhanced Force Ball, teleport, do Motaro teleport to get to the other side, so it prevents them from being able to just back away and from my Enhanced Force Ball, and I'm keeping pressure on them as well as with that particular setup, it creates a 50-50 situation, which is like the only real 50-50 like good scenario that Reptile has at all to go for his 50-50, because his 50-50 consists of his back 3 low combo starter, 16 frames, or his back 2, which you have to hold to combo off of it, and so it's really slow. A lot of the times, though, I'd say like half the time, when I got a Force Ball coming up from behind someone and I'm on the other side of them, usually I get something to hit, right? At the very least, I get some good chip damage and a good reset neutral, keeping the pressure on them. But that's only thanks to Motaro cameo. And, Motaro also with his low tail shot, that's like plus, 15 frames or something like that? 13 frames or something. That's another thing. Although any character can use that to help keep the pressure on. It's not really a Reptile specific thing, where Reptile does have some specific stuff with Motaro thanks to Motaro's teleport. But all in all, Reptile is a character just himself, not with the help of the cameos, but just himself. He doesn't have that much depth. You're going for, full screen, you're closing in, because you have to, one way or the other. Unless you're using cameos that have projectiles, and that's like the only other option. In that footsies, you got your back 3, you got your forward 3, you got your dash attack. So you got a few things there. And then up close, you're really just staggering your back 3 string and your forward 2 mid string. You're basically staggering those and with different, be like, oh, I'm going to do a forward 2-1, now I'm going to do a forward 2 and grab. Stuff like that. Becomes very strike throw, to be honest. It kind of boils into, it ends up being very much strike throw with Reptile. then of course up close, like you only as well you got your standing one and your down one, right? Like everybody else has. So there isn't much you can do differently to play Reptile at his most optimus, or not optimus, but at the most optimal. You don't have a whole array of options or ways to mix things up. One thing I almost forgot is that he does have his back 2 overhead for up close. His back 2 overhead does 19 frames, and I want to say it's like negative 15 or something like that on block. It's definitely punchable on block, and it's just a knockdown right at your feet, so you can do wake up pressure. That's it. Really, it's kind of like the only way to really use this is to basically read that your opponent's expecting you to go low with your back 3, so you go overhead instead, and maybe do it a second, maybe even a third time in a row to bait them into blocking high so you can hit them with the low and get your full combo. It's not something that you want to do as a main strategy, though, using that back 2 overhead with Reptile like a whole lot. You want to use it very sparingly because it's a high risk, low reward situation for Reptile. It's you're playing a risky game there because you get your overhead blocked. It doesn't even have to be up blocked, just blocked, and you're dead for a full combo. So anyways, Reptile doesn't have a shit ton of depth. Not really. You're looking for your back 3, looking for your forward 2, maybe doing your standing 1-1, since it's your fastest option right there in your face. But you're basically playing footsies and doing staggers and playing strike throw. Unless you get, until you get a hit confirm and go into full combo. So, really not that much depth there with Reptile overall. Rather kind of shallow. And cameos don't necessarily, despite what cameo you use, don't enhance Reptile all that much. Motaro does some, Scorpion does a little bit, but nothing too crazy, right? Scorpion, for example, Scorpion cameo will open up a couple new avenues for, a couple new combo routes for Reptile that he doesn't normally have, but nothing that's like, oh, this is my bread and butter, this is what I'm going for all the time. Like, nothing's drastic, basically, over what you can do with other cameos. And Reptile himself is one of the characters in the game that actually does good damage all by himself, that doesn't need a cameo to actually do good damage. And I remember his damage was actually so good that he got nerfed on the first day that the game came out. I had early access to the game before the game actually came out, and Reptile did about 10% more damage on average by himself than he does now. Anyways, not a lot of depth to Reptile, right? However, in my opinion, Reptile is actually one of the most versatile characters in the game. He has some of the most depth of all the characters in the game. Like, overall, his design has more depth than the majority of the roster, in my opinion. Yet, the depth he has is very shallow. So, let's go on and look at another character. Let's take a look at, let's talk about Tanya. So, Tanya is another character that I've played quite a bit in MK1. I like her a lot. She's pretty good. But she's only good with Goro. And it's funny, if you're not playing Tanya with Goro cameo, then you're not playing Tanya right in Mortal Kombat 1. And the reason why I'd say that is because the Goro cameo adds so much to Tanya that it would almost seem like Tanya would be an exception to the rule. Like, Tanya and Goro is like an exception to the rule that cameos don't add that much more depth to characters. Goro actually adds a bit of depth to Tanya, but Tanya by herself or Tanya with any other cameo does not she's so shallow that she's basically not even worth playing. So let's go over the situations, the different scenarios like we did with Reptile. Let's go over it with Tanya. Start with full screen. Full screen, she has her projectile, so she has projectile that goes full screen. Nice. I like that it's even plus on block, so you can use it to kind of help you nudge your way in. You know, throw out her projectile, nudge your way in a little bit, throw out another projectile, nudge your way in, read your opponent as you're doing such, and do what you got to do. Also, for full screen, she has her drill kick that it's a mid. But, it's a mid and it's very unsafe on block. However, a lot of people won't actually expect it from full screen. So you can get like a good counter or a good punish a lot of the time just throwing it out there occasionally and catch your opponent off guard. Typically only works like once in a match doing that, maybe twice, but that's another option she does have. And then, apply pressure, wake up pressure from there, basically. Nothing great, nothing special. She's rather really standard full screen options for a Mortal Kombat character. Then, let's see. So, jump range, mid range. She doesn't really have much, you basically she has a couple moves that do have some really good range on them, some good reach, but the speed of them they're not that fast, so you can typically see her long-reaching moves that you could connect from this range. You can see them coming from a mile away, typically, and they're punchable on block. So again, not great options there. Really, her main game and her main options are right there in the sweep range. She doesn't really want to be up close. We'll get to that, but basically sweep range, she has a mid, her forward 2. It's a 14 frame mid, so it's not the fastest, but it has good reach, so the reach with that speed, actually makes it really good, because you're able to play some good footsies right there around the sweep range, and be able to bait your opponent out and stuff, and mix things up with the string that starts with forward 2. It's like 4-2-1-1-1, something like that. It's or 4-2-1-1-2, something like that. Mix that in, you stagger that. Basically, kind of like with reptiles, like I was saying earlier, it boils down to you basically doing strike throw and staggering the string, mixing in throws, mixing in when you're hitting, and when you do get the hit, confirm, go into full combo. She also has I want to say forward 3, but it might be a back 3. And then back, I think it might be back 3-4-4, or maybe it's forward 3-4-4. It's a low attack that she's all spinning around on the ground on her back, basically, and kicking you, making you airborne slightly. So that's an option to go low. But she doesn't have an overhead. So there's no mix-up game there, really, with Tanya just by herself. She doesn't really have a mix-up game there. So really, she just boils down to strike, throw, and staggers. That's really it. Even with whatever cameo she's using, just about whatever cameo. I mean, there's a few that have overheads, but for the most part, most cameo choices, that's still all she's gonna be, essentially, is strike, throw, and staggers, with her optimal range being right there at sweep distance. Now, with Goro, however, she actually does gain a bit of versatility with Goro, a little bit, not versatility, but she gains a little bit of depth thanks to Goro. A big part of it is that she's now able to do more combos off of things. She can now do a full combo off that low 3 starter, back 3, 4-3, whatever it is. She can get a full combo off of that thanks to extension from Goro off of it. She can get better combos thanks to Goro extension again off of basically any hit, off of whatever you hit them with, and you go into your bread and butter combo basically with her. And he also gives her that overhead. It's an overhead. It's not actually an overhead. It's a low grab. So Goro has this grab move that he only will grab ducking opponents, crouching opponents. And so you can use that to mix with the low and get a combo, good, decent combo either way. So now, with Goro, she has actual 50-50 game. Though it's not the fastest, so you don't want to abuse it. You still want to use your 14 frame mid and going for she's still primarily strike, throw, staggers. But she now has a good 50-50 mix-up to mix into things as well with that. You got people thinking you're going to stagger again, and you go low. Now they're blocking low. Go have Goro come in and grab them. So it works out. And then lastly, and probably the biggest thing, honestly, that you get with Goro paired up with Tanya is that you get an armored launcher, meaning that Tanya can use her armored 3-kick spinning 3-kick move And off of the last hit of that, you can have Goro connect to hit to extend the combo, and you can continue, comboing off of that. So Goro gives her a armored combo starter, or armored launcher, however you'd like to put it. She can get a full combo off her armor move, countering you, right? So that's really powerful. And that's all the things, like, she gains so much from having Goro, but when you look at the character by herself, just her as herself, she's so shallow that literally the only thing that she really has is her 14 frame mid that has good range, and you do strike, throw, staggers with. And that's it. Like, her by herself, you don't have to worry about overheads, so you can just block low everything, so you have yourself covered for any lows. And that's it. She doesn't do good damage by herself without help of a cameo. So that's pretty, that's all Tonya has. She's very shallow by herself. But with Goro, she does gain quite a bit. However, you pair up any other cameo with her, she doesn't gain all that. She doesn't gain nearly as much. You could make maybe an argument for Chameleon, perhaps, but then you have the problem of it always changing, and you're not going to have the consistency. So that is what it is. Basically, there's just a couple examples I wanted to break down of how shallow the characters in Mortal Kombat 1 are actually made. And then the cameos themselves, well, cameos should work. Like, the way this game should work with cameos is how Goro does work with Tonya. Goro actually enhances Tonya and makes Tonya so much better because of this, that, and this, right? Because of all these things that he adds to her game specifically. He doesn't do all that for any other character. He gives an armored launcher to Kun Lao as well, but Kun Lao doesn't even gain all that other stuff that Tonya does. He doesn't gain the same amount of help because he's using Goro. And the depth of the cameos, I mean, they're not supposed to have a shit ton of moves. I don't think we should have cameos that all have shit tons of moves and stuff. We're seeing things like Tremor that has more depth to him than most of the other cameos. We got Janet Cage coming out soon. She is going to have probably the most depth to her as a cameo, but the cameos don't really need to have a bunch of depth. What they should be doing, though, is adding more depth to the characters, but we don't really get that. Striker, for example, he's the same with he's basically the same with any character. There's not any variance of how Striker's going to be used. Same with Kun Lao. Not really, he's basically used the same with any character. But that's kind of the point of the cameos, is that they're supposed to be, of course they're supposed to use the same moves as they do with any other character, but it's supposed to be how you implement the use of their moves that varies. When you use a cameo with literally any character in the game, and you find yourself using that cameo exactly the same way, then there's nothing special about that cameo that's specific to a character that makes enhances them so much more, or something like that. Then that what creates a lack of variety and a lack of depth within the cameo system. The real lack of depth in the cameo system, though, is the lack of variety in the cameos themselves. I feel like there should be more things, more different type of things that the cameos should be doing. And, maybe we'll be seeing some more stuff. I'm sure we'll be seeing some more stuff with new cameos that come out. But I mean, the base roster cameos should be doing more different things to open up more possibilities for more characters. Instead of being like, oh, who am I going to use? Striker or Kano? Oh, what are you using them for? Oh, I'm just using them to keep advantage. Stay safe on block. It's the Kano and Striker are basically used for the same thing, and I don't think that should. I think that's an issue. That's another issue. That's the issue specifically with the cameos and the design of them, is that they're not varied as much as they should be. And there should be more unique properties with the cameos. Anyways, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the cameos, since we are talking about MK1. But the main thing really is, it's even more of an issue in my opinion, that the main characters lack so much depth in their design and in their game. So much so that what cameos are good for them is so much smaller of a pool of a good pairing for whatever character than it should be, because there's only so much you can do. And when you got cameos that don't, so many cameos that do things similar or the same as others, and you don't have enough variety in what the cameos actually do, then that doesn't help. In most cases, that doesn't help. The cameos just don't help add that layer of depth to the characters and to the overall gameplay experience that the developers probably thought it would. There are exceptions here and there, like Tanya with Goro, as we went over. I would have to say that's one of the only exceptions where I feel like the cameo really does a big deal. It's such a big deal for that character, for Tanya, that you basically have, I feel like you have to play Goro, or you have to play Tanya with Goro, otherwise you're not playing Tanya right, because without Goro, then you're missing like almost half a dozen things. But again, each and every character in the game lacks so much depth. I mean, just comparing Tanya to Reptile doesn't have a lot of depth, but holy shit does he have more depth than Tanya does overall. It's just, this is what this has done, is that this has made figuring characters out so simplistic and so easy and fast that this has made figuring characters out so easy and fast that once you're done figuring out a character in MK1, I get to the point where I'm like, is that it? Am I like, literally with every character, I was like, is that it? Is there something I'm missing? Am I forgetting something? Like, is there something that I'm not understanding here? Is there something I'm missing? Or is that really it for this character? And I'd go look online, look at other people's videos and stuff, just to compare, to see, like, is there something I'm missing? And be like, nope, no, I'm not missing anything. That's just, that is what there is. So compare the depth of the Mortal Kombat characters in Mortal Kombat 1 to the depth of the characters in Tekken 8. And oh my god, it is so night and day. I mean, it's Mortal Kombat 1, everything boils down to cheap gimmick or strike throw. And that's because of the total lack of depth and the lack of options. There just isn't there isn't anything else for you to do in the game. You're basically in a game that was advertised to be like, oh, we are gonna have freedom and free to be able to express ourselves. We feel very restricted because of how the characters and stuff are designed. We feel like there's only one way to play this. They're kind of like in a straight line. For the most part, most characters, they're just in a straight line, one way to play them. If you jump from Mortal Kombat 1 to Tekken 8, you will immediately see how night and day the lack of depth is, or the level of depth is between the two. I haven't played a lot of Tekken 8, just picked it up recently. Mainly I've only learned one character so far, but I've been fiddling around with a few others, but haven't learned them like a great deal yet. But I've been learning the game, and I can see how much better it is than MK1 by a mile. NetherRealm should be embarrassed. Like, they literally should be embarrassed about MK1 at this point. For a variety of reasons. But I feel like this is one of the top reasons they should be. Is because they're showing how incompetent they are. And it's being even magnified even more than ever how incompetent they are at designing characters as far as their gameplay goes. In Tekken, I'm going to use Fane Wei as an example, because that's who I know the most at the moment. So with Tekken, the mechanics are a little different. You got your lows, you got your mids, you got your highs. Mids are kind of like overheads, where it will hit a crouching opponent. It can't be blocked while crouching. Doing a combo in Tekken is basically doing what they call air combos, where you're doing something that will launch him up, and you're basically do a string that will connect to continue the combo there, hitting them in the air, and then typically you can do like a third part where, you know, they might even, you know, a third part that might be getting them in the air still, or maybe they hit the ground and you're hitting them off the ground for the last part of the combo, or maybe on the wall or whatever, right? So you have this, you know, then you have high attacks that can be ducked, low attacks gotta be blocked low, or they can, you know, you can avoid them by doing a move that has you jumping up, I suppose. And then mids, or like always, you have to block them high. It's very rock paper scissors type of system. Very basic to understand. It's very much like a rock paper scissors type of thing. So every character, now I can't say 100% for sure, but at least from what I can tell from what I've played, it does seem like every character has mids and lows. And so essentially every character in the game is capable of playing a mix-up type of game one way or another, right? Obviously, certain characters are going to be better than others at that type of game, going for the mix-ups, but doing the mix-ups is actually a big part of the meta for Tekken 8, from what I can tell. And everyone, like I said, everyone has these options. Everyone has these types of mix-ups. It just varies how good at mix-ups they have, and variances such as, you know, how fast the different moves are, the frames of each of the different moves. Does someone have, you know, set something up with plus frames on block, try to set things up? You know, fake someone out and go for a grab instead. But overall, you're actually given a bit of options on how to approach your opponent. You could try to dash in and then sidestep to try to catch someone off guard like that way. If you're expecting somebody to sidestep, there's certain moves that characters have that will hit people that are sidestepping. There's counter moves, there's parries, there's, you know, what they call power crushes, where you basically absorb. They're almost like armored moves where you absorb a hit or two, and you hit them with this power move that puts you right into heat mode. And you got the whole heat system that has when you're in heat mode, each character typically gains something or a couple of things that are unique in that mode that they normally can't do, or certain combos you can do in heat mode that you can't do outside of heat mode. There's back attacks. I mean, like with Fane Wei, there's multiple moves of his that will have him in this backwards stance where he has his back to the opponent, and then there's multiple things that he can do from there. Even a grab. He can even grab with his back to you, grab you. So there's just each character just has a variety of ways to approach their opponents and how to play and how to deal with different situations. And no character, if anything, at first when you come from Mortal Kombat to Tekken 8, if anything, the characters almost feel overwhelming with how much they do have, because they literally have, like, you go to the move list and you're going to be going over over 100 different things. There's over 100 different moves there for each character, and it's going over, when you're moving this way, you're pressing this direction and these buttons, you press 1 and 2 at the same time, and various directions of different moves, different grabs, your different stances. Characters have different stances and stuff. Not every character, but characters have stances and they do different things. Different parries. There's just so much that a single character has that it actually takes a little bit of time to learn all the inputs and memorize them, and then learn how to, a little more time to learn how to use all that to bring it all together to do combos and whatnot, and to play effectively and optimally. I mean, I wasn't even going over Fang Wei there specifically too much, really. Really just kind of talking about Tekken 8 in general and how its mechanics are. And that's how it is for every character. And there's so much depth in that system. Just what I told you about the system already. And you got I didn't mention you got counter hits as well that are actually have different properties. So, for example, Fang Wei has his standing 1-1. It's whatever, right? You're not gonna get anything else off of it. But if it's a counter hit, unless I'm mistaken, could be mistaken, but I believe it's the standing 1-1. If you get it as a counter hit, then you can basically combo off of it. So that's how Tekken has, basically just so much more depth than Mortal Kombat that it's crazy. It makes Mortal Kombat 1 look like it's a game that's literally in alpha still, as far as its design goes. Then let's go ahead and do one more comparison. Street Fighter 6. Don't think I even need to bring up a specific character. Let's talk about it in general. You got your rush, your drive gauge, your rush gauge. You got all the new systems that they implemented into Street Fighter 6, and each system adds a layer of depth, and every character uses these systems and uses the depth. Overall, I wouldn't say Street Fighter has as much depth as Tekken. I'd say Tekken 8 has the most depth of the three, as far as the individual characters and their moves. But Street Fighter 6 still has way more depth than Mortal Kombat 1 does. You got, your light, medium, heavy attacks for your punches and your kicks. You have counter hits that lead to unique combos. You have the drive gauge or drive rush that help lead to unique combos. You can also help, keep pressure on. And then you have your special moves that vary, and that's what adds some depth to characters. So let's go ahead and bring up one example. Marissa, she doesn't have any fireballs. She's a character without any projectiles. But she has armored moves, like these armored special moves that help get through the projectiles and counter still. Also, she is designed to be very very oppressive on top of her opponent. But that's not all she has, though. Even though she doesn't have a good footsies game, really, like mid-range game, she does have some good mix-ups with her stance. She has that one stance where she can grab people, and you can basically mix whether you're going for the grab or just going to sit there and do the counter hit that auto happens if they hit you while you're in that stance. I'm forgetting what it's called right now, but it's where she puts her arms up and she'll do an automatic counter hit if you hit her when she's in that. But you can also just grab your opponent for some good damage there. She has various combos that are unique to counter hits specifically. Or specifically need to use the rush, the drive gauge, for. But that's the case with basically every character in the game. That's where they get the depth. Street Fighter 6 is probably a good example of what Mortal Kombat 1 should be. It should have been more like. It's 2D fighting game still. Each character doesn't have necessarily a huge list of different moves that they do. They got their normal strikes, and they got their special moves. And a lot of the depth that these characters have and what you can do comes from counter hits and from the drive gauge, from the drive system. But they also have depth, like a part of the depth of the Street Fighter 6 characters is the characters themselves and what their move, the normal moves and their special moves actually are, and the properties of them. Like good poke. You want to, for example, characters typically they have a good poke. A lot of them have decent projectile of some sort. Good air moves, and different air moves depending on how you're jumping in, how far you're jumping in from, or where you're going to attack, how you're, just depending on how you're reading your opponent. For example, if I read that I jump I keep jumping over this dude's Ryu player's fireball, keep punching him. Well, I read, and then I think and read that he's going to actually try to counter me, my jump in, by jumping up in the air himself and hitting me out of the air. But if I anticipate that, then I can change what button I press and actually hit him in the air first, if he does indeed jump. The depth of, taking something as simple as light, medium, and heavy attacks, where you're doing the same thing we're not the same thing, but you're doing similar. With some characters, you're doing basically the same type of moves, but different strengths, and they have different, slightly different properties to them. For example, lights typically are gonna be safer than heavy attacks, for example. So, how Street Fighter ends up playing is that, I wouldn't say there's as much depth overall as Tekken 8, but because of the systems and how well the characters are designed, and everyone has like the basic tools, it has overall way more depth than Mortal Kombat 1 does. It's just Mortal Kombat 1's so damn shallow that it's crazy to me. I really don't know if there's anything that they could do to fix it. I think there's too much for them to do. That MK1, I think it could definitely get better. I do believe they can definitely make it better than it currently is. But I don't think there's any way. I mean, they could, but I don't think realistically that they're going to. That there's any way that they're going to get it to be on par with Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8. And it comes down to the gameplay has no fucking depth to it. And without that depth, it gets boring as hell. You deal with the same situation over and over and over. And it's just people get bored and tired of it. And when your game is literally all it is strike, throw, and the only variance beyond that is basically cheap bullshit. And if you lose to the cheap bullshit, you just feel like you lost to some cheap bullshit that you wouldn't have to deal with in any other fighting game. Some cheap bullshit that shouldn't even be there to begin with, to be real. But yeah, that's where I'm going to leave this rant, leave this video. I meant to make this a short video, but it's going on a little bit longer than I expected. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I just kind of wanted to talk about the lack of depth that Mortal Kombat 1 has, and kind of break things down a little bit with using a couple characters as examples, but then compared to its main competitors as well, to kind of show a full picture of what I'm talking about. Let me know in the comments section, what do you think? What do you think of, do you think Mortal Kombat 1 lacks as much depth as I think it does? Do you disagree? Do you think it's just fine as it is? Sound off. Let me know. Let's talk about it. And I'll catch you guys next time here on ICMK.